need to open the video that is being streamed live. Look for the chat box on the side or bottom of the video player. This is where you can type your message. Click inside the chat box and use your keyboard to type out what you want to say. You can type words, use emojis, or even ask questions. Once you've typed your message, press the Enter key on your keyboard or click the Send button. Your comment will then appear in the chat for everyone watching the live stream to see. If you want to send another comment, just type it in the chat box again and press Enter or Send. Your new comment will show up below your previous one.
Good day. Good day. Up to the middle of last week, the security forces had shot and killed 35 Jamaicans since the start of the year. That's just about one a day. Frankly speaking, many Jamaicans don't bat an eyelid over that. Frankly speaking, we know too that many Jamaicans approve of or are enthusiastic about police fatalities and even extrajudicial killings. Regardless, we have with us today a former Minister of National Security, Derek Smith, whose thoughts we have asked for on this matter. Thanks to you for joining us for this 154th episode of the Frankly Speaking Jamaica Podcast. We value your comments. You may post them on the Frankly Speaking Jamaica YouTube channel as you've been directed just now. And you may also send to 876-503-9995 during as well as after the show. Let's get right to it, since Mr. Smith is able to be with us for only a few 15 minutes as he has a prior engagement. I hope Mr. Smith is here. He's not here as yet. We're going to be with Mr. Smith in a little while. Now we're going to come back to this issue, but we're going to ask Winnie to read for us one of the latest releases from Indicom regarding this matter of police fatal shooting. Winnie,
Okay.
let's take it forward.
Yes, it's not. Joshua, it's not yet on the screen. It's not yet on the screen. Let me see if I can find it to read it otherwise. Oh, here it is. The Independent Commission of Investigations, Indicom, was notified and commenced investigations into two separate police fatal shooting incidents, which resulted in the death of 3 men on February 6, 2025. Both incidents occurred in St. Catherine along Port Henderson Road and the double fatal shooting along Spanish Town Bypass. These latest incidents increase the total to 35 persons who have been fatally shot by the security forces so far this year, of which 7 of the deaths occurred in this month. Comparatively, in 2024, 9 persons were fatally shot during the month of February. The deceased men have been identified as Rosani Alexander and brothers Everton Spike, 44 years old, and Jason Spike, 33 years old.
Thank you, Winnie. So we have mentioned before the numbers have increased this year so far. We're going to give you some more details as we go along. The numbers have increased. And there are some people who are very concerned about it. And as I've said, some people, it's just par for the course. And we are taking on this issue. We're still waiting on Mr. Smith to join us. But I know Desmond had some comments that he wanted to take. But just before Desmond, I started checking the data, but I didn't get very far or far enough to see how Jamaica ranked per capita on security forces fatal shooting. Now we know how Jamaica ranks with murders, and we know the savagery of some of it, which is why many people don't want to hear about any rights or any numbers of kills. They just say, proceed security forces. Get rid of the criminal for dead. That is a common sentiment in Jamaica. Nonetheless, Jamaicans for Justice, DFJ, is continuing to call for the use of body-worn cameras as an essential tool to ensure justice and protect the rights of citizens. In a recent release, yes, Desmond, go ahead before we put up with James.
No, one of the things that we are missing in Jamaica is that the rate at which police, security forces kill gunmen is not solving the crime. Now, what is consistent if you look at the data?
Further, Desmond, even before you go any further, how do you know it's not dealing with the crime?
But the numbers are there in front of you. If killing gunmen was the solution to crime, don't you see that there's been a steady increase in the murder number since 1980? 1980, you had 800 murders. Okay, the number of murders went down to about in the 400s. After that, murder numbers keep climbing until it reached 1,000. Think it was, don't remember the exact year. But since then, it has not gone down below 1,000. It will remain above. In 2010, when you had the invasion of Tivoli, the crime numbers went down. The first 3 months of 2011, then Minister of Security Dwight Nelson told us that there was a 44% decrease in the number of murders. Since then, what we are having in Jamaica is we have had this is a stop and go. So here it is, the 1 year, 2 year, the numbers go down, and then it escalates.
The last 2 years and so far this year, the numbers are down.
Yes. What we don't have a consistency where the strategies that we are using, the police killings, the different curfews, what have you, it has not resulted in a consistent reduction in the number of murders in Jamaica.
And Desmond,
let's welcome Jeffrey Worrell and Rubian Forbes, regular listeners and viewers to this program. And here is Eric Smith is here now. So
thank you very much. So Mr. Smith, welcome and thank you very much for joining us, sir. Hope you can hear us.
I'm here. Yes, hearing
all right,
you.
Thank you very much. Just give us your thoughts as a former lead for the security services, the fight against crime, as a former Minister of National Security. Going back, you were such under the Bruce Golding administration. Give us your thoughts on this matter of fatal security forces shooting. Normally we say fatal police shooting. There are a few from the army as well. What's your thoughts, Mr. Smith?
Franklin, I first would have to look at the environment in which the security forces are working. The environment is one that is extremely hostile. Over the last 20 years, every year we have had over 1,000 murders, which actually means that we are consistently one of the bloodiest and country in the world in relation to homicides. Now, against that background, and also the fact that the police in particular, over the last 10 years, over 100 have been killed in the line of duty. So looking at that sort of a background or an environment in which they have to work, I would not be taken aback by what I think you're discussing, the high levels of fatal shooting by the security forces.
And when
So,
you, when,
so,
sorry, go ahead.
so as when you were minister, you sanction it, and as a former minister, you are sanctioning it. That's the position, right, Mr. Smith?
My position is the position of the current commissioner of police, is that the security forces must first defend themselves. And on occasion where criminals using firearms attack them, they must defend themselves. That's my position. And I don't know about sanction, but I
No,
stand.
but
My
the state,
point is that the security forces must defend themselves against these dog-hearted criminals who kill over 1,000 Jamaicans every year for the last 20 years.
what we want, what we want, well, I don't think any reasonable Jamaican is not expecting, and I am not expecting the security forces to put their hands in the air when they are attacked by gunmen. As a matter of fact, I am saying that if you take up arms against the state, that's a deadly act, and the consequences are grave. But what we want a security force that when it reports to us, there we can believe what they are saying. In Jamaica, for the last 40 years, the stories from the police has always been channeled, right?
Challenge.
Every time there's a shooting, the people
have been challenged.
Yes,
Yeah,
the people, right? And so what we want the police force to be in a position that when it says, yes, we were attacked, they can provide us with evidence. And therefore,
Desmond, allow him to respond to that, Desmond. But I think he will start to respond.
my position also is that in recent years, not many years ago, we established Indicom. And I don't know if you are suggesting that Indicom is not effective, not doing a good job, because their job is when the police or the security forces make a report about shooting, fatal shooting, they investigate to establish it's factual. And if not, the individuals involved are brought to book. So are you suggesting that Indicom is not doing their job?
Indicom is doing what it can do. One of the things that you must remember, that Indicom is not present when these shootings occur. For example, that there was a shooting on Mountain View last week before last, where a 57-year-old gunman. Now that is something that is in question because in Jamaica our gunmen are not in their 50s. That has not
there's
been
nothing
the
to
case.
suggest that a man won't be in his 50s or 60s and decide to take up his gun and fire it against the police.
Well, the police.
Winnie, can you just give us
Let's bring in
before Winnie comes in. Before Winnie comes in, this case on Mountain View Avenue, this house is a house with camera, right? And I am told that the cameras were removed, the scene was cleaned. So yes, Indicom is doing what it can do, but remember what happened, is the police. The police alone is present when these shootings occur now.
Which
What
takes
we
us on in
want, we
another
want.
direction.
No, no,
Which,
no, no,
which
no,
we're going
no,
to
no.
ask him about the
The
cameras.
police and the gangster, the police and the criminal, not the police alone.
Right.
The police
I,
and whoever it turns out to
I
be.
don't I don't expect the gangsters to give us any accurate story. I'm talking we want accurate information from the police.
Mr. Smith,
And
I want to ask you a broader question. Before Winnie, you want to go ahead and
Yes.
comment?
Let's
And then
go
we'll
ahead
come to Mr. Smith again.
and make sure that I call his name correctly. Israel, forgive me if that's not how you call your name, Ali. He says, who police the police? Indicom has been de-toothed to become a dog without a bite. That's what Israel says. And Jennifer Jackson says, good afternoon. Are the killings concentrated on a specific area or is it island-wide? And Jeffrey Worrell, I think the police force is out of control. Not saying that they shouldn't defend themselves, but a lot of times the police does not respect the rights of the citizens of Jamaica. These are the comments
on what
from our
basis can you
viewers.
make that statement? Have you been
no,
on these crime scenes? On what basis can you make that statement?
no, hold on.
That is a challenge for you, Jeffrey.
Mr. Smith, remember the history of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. You know, you remember do you remember the Jamaica Constabulary Force was formed in 1867? You know, that is 2 years after the rebellion, not to protect the people. Try and remember the objective. It wasn't formed to protect the people. It was formed to protect the planters. And that image is an image where we are still faced with that kind of image in Jamaica. You observe how the police behave.
Give Mr. Smith a
Desmond,
chance because we don't want him to leave us.
you're exposing your bias. This is a completely different police force. Completely different police force. A modernized police force. I don't accept that.
Mr. Smith, Mr. Smith, may I ask you a broader question as I have been indicating? Do you, as a former Minister of Security, take any responsibility for where we are now? And do you think other ministers of national security, before and since you, should take responsibility for where the nation is with the crime situation now? And I don't just mean police later shooting, the crime situation.
Any current or former minister of national security should and ought to take responsibility for what's happening during their time in office.
And how do you feel about that yourself? Do you think that you could have gone in a different direction? You could have done more? What do you point to as the main issue now? Because having been security minister, you still have the security things in your head. You are the briefings. What do you think are the main issues now, Mr. Smith?
Well, what I think the main issue now is that we have seen over the last couple of years at least that the current commissioners and their team seem to be getting ahead of the criminals. Our statistics over the last year, 2 years at least, been showing improvement. First, a 8% reduction, and more recently, a 19% reduction. And this is something that we should celebrate instead of finding all sort of fault about what security forces are doing.
Mr. Smith, let me remind you something that you are missing. Crime reduction. This is not your colleague, the late minister there, Dwight Nelson. The first 3 months of 2011, the crime rate, murder was 44% down compared to the period 2010. 44%. Over the year, ministers of national security and commissioners of police have reported decline in crime. The 19% last year is nothing new. What we have failed to do in Jamaica is to reduce the crime, reduce murders on a consistent basis. What has happened? It has been climbing over the years until it reached 1,000. And since it reached 1,000, it has not gone below 1,000.
All right,
So
Winnie, let's hear you
Let's go
before we
back
let
to
go,
the
Mr. Smith. We just
comments.
want,
Yes,
we
let's go
want
back.
him to answer one more question before we go off. Hold on, Desmond. Go ahead, Winnie.
Yes, Ruby and Forbes says, what about using stun guns? Sorry, Ruby and Forbes says the government is not serious about crime fighting in the country. And Safe Bites Jamaica says, what about using stun guns instead of live bullets? That's a question. And Jeffrey Worrell says, we have seen the treatment, how they have dealt with the public from time to time.
Mr. Smith, I have
And
a question. I
the
have a
last
question
one,
here.
police crime scenes in Jamaica are jokes, says I
Mr.
say,
Smith, I have a
I'm not
question here
sure.
from a listener saying, what would you tell the people overseas, the Jamaicans in diaspora, about where the crime situation is now and what's your thinking on the police fatal shootings? You started there, so I'll just allow you to go back.
I would tell them that today and most recently we have a much better trained police force. We have an establishment which is about some 15,000. We have a reduction in murders and in serious crimes. And I would also tell them that they need to come together abroad, put some groups in place or some facility to appeal to members in diaspora who are sending guns to Jamaica. 82 to 83% of the murders, the 1,000 murders per year, is by the gun. We don't make guns here, right? So they have a responsibility, and I think they should do more than being critical of what's happening in the country. That's what I would say to them.
And would you say that we have enough cooperation in Jamaica between the opposition and the government? How do you feel about that, Mr. Smith, as a former security minister? Do you think we have
It's
enough cooperation between those two? And did we have it at your time?
no. My recall is I don't recall a period while I was there or while I was understudying the portfolio for a few years before that there was any cooperation between the sitting government and the opposition. And that's one of the most unfortunate things ever, right? Because when you're in opposition, there's a tendency for you to highlight weaknesses and which plays into the hands of the dog-hearted criminals and also these human rights groups, right? So-called human rights groups. Some of them they
Why you
tend
say
to
they are so-called human rights group?
they tend to people perceive them to be on the side of the criminals and not the established security forces.
No, the ruling class see them that way. The masses don't see them that way.
Winnie, before
No,
Mr. Smith goes, you want to just
one
read
more
a few
comment.
comments?
Last comment from Paul James. He says, too many Jamaicans support criminals and criminality. And that's the final comment I have
Former
here.
Minister, your reaction to that?
That's a fact. That's a fact. When the
You feel a
security
lot of
force,
Jamaicans support criminality?
they do, or else the level of criminality could not exist in the environment. They have to get support from the populace. You see, whenever the
Yes.
police take out certain criminals, entire communities protest, whether it's Tivoli Gardens with others, or whatever the name in Spanish Town, or in Montego Bay or in East Kingston, the communities come out and protest, right? Let's support the criminality. It couldn't exist if we came together as a body against criminals. It couldn't last.
But But you also have to take
I
into
want to,
consideration.
this is an important, I'm sorry, this is an important comment, especially for the minister, and I want to get it in. I would like to take the opportunity to thank this minister for the contribution and urge him to form an association of former ministers and a think tank. This is from Israel Ali. And forgive me for not saying your name correctly. I'm not sure.
Minister, before you
Israel.
go, and I thank you, we thank you for staying with us a little bit more longer than you said you would, because we know you're pressing and issues that you have. But before you go, I've had this comment before. In fact, we had it on this program. But there are some people who have said that the former security ministers, former police commissioners, former heads of the JDA should be part of a think tank to which government refer constantly for advice. Have you ever heard that suggestion, and what do you think about it?
Well, somebody on this panel right now, I've heard them with that proposal. But don't forget that we have what is called a Security Council. They meet regularly, right? And they're open to inviting any of the former chief of staff or police commissioners or anybody to assist them in looking at policy and strategies. So it could be an overlap, or it could definitely be an overlap.
Thank you very much, Mr. Derek Smith. He's a former Minister of National Security. He was a long-standing MP in St. Andrew. We thank you very much. St. Andrew Northwestern, I should be very specific.
God bless.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay,
Bye.
brother Derek.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
That was the former Minister of National Security, Derek Smith, who served in the Bruce Golding cabinet. I was going to go to the present Commissioner of Police, and Joshua, I wonder if we can now hear the present Commissioner of Police.
Before you bring up the current Commissioner of Police, when I think that we need to look at it, because we all three of us on this panel, we are living in Jamaica since 1962. No.
Yes.
But one of the things that is absent when it comes down to fatal police shootings, it is sanctioned by the state, you know. You can you recall where the leader, the Prime Minister, whether PNP or JLP Prime Minister, has ever come out and condemned fatal police shootings?
No,
I have never heard it.
No, there are some meanderings around it. But Desmond, I want to go in that direction where you're taking, because one of the issues with that is the nature of, and Mr. Smith alluded to it, is the nature of the nature and the amount of the criminality that exists in Jamaica. People are conscious that a lot of wickedness is done by gunmen.
Yes.
It's not something we hear or dream about. It's wickedness, it's cruelty. Last week we heard, and that wasn't even a gunman. Last week we heard of the death of this 14-year-old girl.
That wasn't done by a gunman, you know.
No,
that wasn't a gunman.
It wasn't a gunman. It's just the nature of the criminality. Nor was the woman who was killed up in the 72-year-old woman who was mentioned last week, retired person there in St. Anne. Nor was Barbara Gale. Nor were many of these awful crimes. But people
Franklin,
are aware of them. It's real people who are committing these crimes, Desmond.
Franklin, hold on. Remember,
and people are aware that those same people will stand up to police, will draw their guns on police, will attack police because they are criminal minded. Some of them have burden of fear. Some of them have
Franklin, the point. Hold on.
And so
Franklin, the point is,
when people are cut down, people say, that's a criminal. That's a criminal.
Hold on. Listen, the point is not that we are asking for gunmen to be treated with like children, you know. That is not the point.
Not with kids clothes.
No, that's not the point. What we want our security force to be credible, right?
Desmond, how do you get to your security forces being credible? One of the tools that has been mentioned, I'm going to allow you now with it. One of the tools that has been mentioned is body-worn cameras. I fully support that. But let Winnie go.
Yes,
go ahead, Winnie.
I am saying that I'm just supporting what you said before I even make my comment. And that is, it is unfortunate that the body-worn cameras are not being worn by the police. Because in this context, in this kind of Jamaica, we want the truth. There are even poems about police killings and what have you. And the needle has shifted now. We are over on the other side where if you want your rights to be protected, the criminals' rights are more guaranteed than the rights of ordinary citizens. Because when the criminal, when it is clear, it is not like you don't know who did the killing. It is clear that X did the killing. When you go through the process, most Jamaicans believe in capital punishment. The powers that be do not believe, apparently, they do not believe in capital punishment. That's another side to these killings, you know. There are a number of Jamaicans who are comfortable when the police kill because they say that these criminals are just going to prison to eat their labor because we have to support them in prison. So it's a complex issue. But one thing that would solve the problem, I totally agree, if the police would wear the cameras, that would solve a lot of the problem.
Well, as your response before we go to the commissioner's words
as it relate to the cameras now, what the authorities are saying that they don't have the infrastructure for the cameras to be operative, you know, because first of all they don't have enough cameras, one, but they don't have the system in place to do the recordings, and just wearing the camera is not enough. They must be in a position to record and retrieve
and to have somebody able to review the data fairly quickly, etc. And,
so
Desmond, I think that's a line we need to go along, because if the police had an intention to do it, they could get there faster than they are doing now.
If the authorities, if the government,
portion of the people who are shot and killed by security forces are killed on what they call targeted operation. In other words, they know they're going out to these places, and therefore, at least those police should have the camera.
If the government was interested if the government did not sanction police killings, they would have put the system in place long ago so that the police can retrieve, and produce evidence whenever these shootings occur.
Okay, so let's hear Commissioner, the present Commissioner, talking about those people who are talking about police fatal shooting.
We will be pursuing criminals wherever they are. It doesn't matter what firepower they have. It doesn't matter how bad they think they are. We are coming. So this call to police to reduce fatal shooting, it's wrongly directed. It ought to be directed at criminals who raise their gun. Because you will not get me to tell my police not to pursue criminals. We're going. What I would love these agencies and these persons who are talking about fatal shooting to do is to tell criminals, do not raise the gun at the police. I don't spend millions and millions of dollars in 2024, millions of dollars each month training my OST, my fighting force, so that they don't lose a battle against criminals. I don't train them and invest so much money so that criminals can take them out.
That's the Commissioner of Police saying, direct your sentiments at the criminals and tell them don't test Nonetheless, Jamaicans for Justice, JFJ, continued to call for the use of body-worn cameras as an essential tool to ensure justice and protect the rights of citizens. In a recent release, JFJ said, this escalation, that is an escalation since 2025 in January, follows a troubling pattern from 2023 when 155 fatal shooting incidents were recorded, none of which involved the use of operational body-worn cameras. In 2023, remember now, 155. In 2024, the situation worsened with 189 fatalities reported, a 34% increase over the previous year. Now, as I've said earlier in the program, the numbers so far this year are roughly one a day. It should take you over 300 for the year. It should be a significant increase if the trend, the pattern continues. And Jeff just said 2024 represents the highest number of fatal shootings in over a decade. Since 2013, recorded 258 fatalities by the security forces. These figures, provided by Independent Commission of Investigation, INDECOM, paint a grim picture of the state of security operations in Jamaica. That's what they're saying. And other people believe that that might represent some amount of progress because the police are getting the upper hand on criminals. And Desmond, one of the things that will come out this year, we'll get there somehow, is whether the police, that we are seeing police killings rise as murders decline. And that is something that somebody will pull together to make a decision, determination.
But that is what we don't want.
Ask Winnie to just take those comments.
We don't.
Yes.
That is what we do. That is what we don't want. We don't want murders to decline and police fatalities going up. That is not a good sign. That's not a good sign. Yes.
We want the two of them to decline.
And we want the police. As I said before, if you attack the police, then you are giving away your life. Because the police is not going to put up their hands in the air. I don't want a police force that put its hands in the air when they're approaching gunmen. You have guns, hand over the weapon. Once you raise your arm against the police, then you are likely to be killed. There's no doubt about that. But we don't want a situation to.
Go ahead with your comments before we come to your other little matter we want to take on this week.
Big matter is the Royal Ali. He is on a different train. He's talking about. He says, "Can you name one country where capital punishment is practiced, where crime has gone down? Not one." That is a different argument for a different time. This one, Jennifer Jackson says, "How do people overseas know?" And help me here, please. How do people overseas know? And yes, I wasn't seeing the rest of it. How do people overseas still not seeing that one? How do people overseas? It's about overseas. People overseas know who import guns to Jamaica as suggested by the
Former minister.
by the former guest. Working body cameras, great idea. That's Jennifer Jackson. So let me do that again. How do people overseas know and reach people who import guns to Jamaica as suggested by the former guest? Working body cameras, great idea.
Yes, and one of the things that we know is that we don't, and he said we can take that as given, but we don't make guns in Jamaica. And these guns are coming in, and what he and others have suggested is that the Jamaican members of the Jamaican diaspora overseas should increase their lobby to prevent the ease at which guns are exported to Jamaica, and also that the Jamaicans in the diaspora should also vote for those members who are exporting guns to Jamaica, those sending them down in barrels and in boxes and so on. I think that's where we will go.
I
Winnie,
think,
we don't want
well,
this program without talking about life certificates.
life certificates.
Yes.
Yes, as we have discussed last year, most pensioners, it's not all, government pensioners must provide some two life certificates, one to the accountant general's department and another one to the national insurance purposes. So one is done on a quarterly basis. 4 times per year, you need to tell the government that you're still alive in order to get your pension. And it is a huge challenge. It is unjust, we are saying, and there are untold suffering. Many people are having a really hard time with this. This is a matter that has been brought to public attention time and time again. The last time I brought it up, I was told, good luck, because I tried years ago and I did not succeed. And I don't believe you will ever succeed. It is on the table and we will not let it go until a change comes. They said that NIDS would bring about the difference. Let's see what is happening with that. And I'll keep you posted on that as I drill down into
the
what's
point
going
is,
on.
Winnie, before you move from life certificates, because I see some other comments still coming, but
Yes.
isn't there some truth that the government is trying to prevent fraud on the system of the pensions?
It is true, but
And we are particularly inviting people overseas to tell us how the governments, especially in Canada, UK, and the US, prevent fraud in these programs. But go ahead. Ian.
and right here in Jamaica. The truth be told, the pressure that is put on the people who can never commit that fraud is unjust, because the people who have to bear the burden, they can never collect money after they are dead. So they should not have to be pressured this way. There must be another way. There must be a better way that is just and fair.
Thanks, Winnie.
Yes.
Desmond, you look like you're itching to say something.
No, the only thing I would do is repeat myself is that in this state, what is happening to these poor people is just a lack of care by the state. If the state, if the politicians, the members of parliament, ministers over the years, these are the issues that they must address. These are the issues that impact the poor people, the masses, the people who vote for them. And there are so many issues out there to be attended that will make life easier for the ordinary Jamaican left unattended. This is one of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Winnie, you want to take
Well,
a comment from?
Owen Richards, he says the problem with fighting crime in Jamaica is that criminals have informers within police force. That is a statement we have heard over the years. And Jeffrey Worrell says, I didn't have proof, but I've heard that the US government offered to be present government of Jamaica, a company that's called Secure Ports to protect our borders, and Jamaican government responded. And that I have no comment on because we don't know anything about that.
I don't know anything about it either. And I
Yeah.
don't know about the farmers in the police force, but I know that there is corruption within it. That is long accepted, as in so many Jamaican institutions. But I won't end back without saying congratulations to those members of the force who keep within the law.
The law.
That
Yes.
mentioned some who can't believe, or a lot who can't believe, those who keep within the law. That's what
Yes.
for our show this week. Keep those comments coming to the channel or to our WhatsApp number 876-503-9995. By the way, if you have not logged on yet on my midweek podcast, I invite you to. The most recent was about the widespread theft of electricity in Jamaica and the fact that you are paying on your bill $1,000 a month and more for the people who steal electricity. Yes, that's what Minister
That's a
Bard.
serious issue.
Very serious issue. And we're going to come at it over here too. Thanks to Desmond and
Yes.
Winnie, our regular panelists. Thanks to Joshua Black Media Services for technical operations. And a special thanks to former MP and former Minister of National Security, Derek Smith, who was our guest today. Please remember to share this podcast. If you have not yet subscribed to the Frankly Speaking Jamaica Podcast YouTube channel, please do so right now. On behalf of all of us, again, thank you. And thank you, McKnight. Until then.
Yes.